Trusted Transportation Authority.
Thank you. Now I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So
Move
moved.
approval of the second.
Did you get that, Christina? I didn't.
Yes, I got Member Taylor moving and Member Geringer second.
Okay, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Committee Member Arnrich,
Yes.
Committee Member Taylor,
Yes.
Alternate Member Haskew,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Geringer,
Aye.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
Okay, a motion passes by majority with committee members Arnrich, Taylor, Geringer, and Butt all voting yeas, and alternate member Haskew voting abstain. Motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull an item off the consent calendar?
I would move the item, but I have a comment. We're paying a lot of money to CHP. There's nearly $750,000. That was staggering. I don't think I've ever seen bills that big. But these all caught up over a long period of time, or what was the story here?
Yes, Commissioner Heinrich, that was something that was paid under construction contracts. Yes, we did. And as you know, there was a lot of catching up for sure. CHP is not the most reliable invoicer that we have. They take forever. We have to remind them constantly. And also keep in mind that we did do a lot of work over the summer on the Express Lane project, so a lot of costs were compressed. That's a lot of money for sure, but we definitely need them out there.
Okay, and that was all, obviously it's all within budget of what we were.
Yes, this is nothing has been exceeded there that we haven't already budgeted for. Yes.
Okay, so I'm move it as presented. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Arnrich. A second by
Geringer.
Second by Geringer. Call the roll call vote, please, Christina.
Committee Member Arnrich,
Yes.
Committee Member Taylor, Committee Member Taylor, alternate member Haskew,
Yes.
Vice Chair Geringer,
Yes.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
The next item on the agenda is the legislative update. Lindsay Willis will present this item.
Good morning, commissioners. We have with us today actually both our federal advocates, Jason Ty and Gus Maples, as well as our state advocate, Mark Watts. So instead of having you listen to me speak, because you're going to get to do that on the next item, I'm going to let each of them give their updates and answer any questions you may have. So maybe we'll start with the federal update. So Jason or Gus, feel free to take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Brief update on the current state of play in Congress. We are seeing some action, some negotiations going back and forth on a federal stimulus package. Yesterday, actually, Speaker Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Schumer endorsed a much more scaled back package, just under $1 trillion than they had previously been pushing for. So I view that as a positive step on finding some common ground. The big benefit here is there is a deadline to attach anything to the government spending bill. The current deadline for government spending to run out is the end of next week, December 11th. There could be a need for a short-term extension there. I've been speaking to some former colleagues with the appropriations committees earlier this week, and they say they're in a bit of a quote unquote hurry up and wait mode. That they're trying to resolve some of the bigger issues at the leadership level, but largely a lot of the package has been finalized. Expecting the Transportation and HUD subcommittee numbers to be somewhere between the Senate and House marked up levels that were released earlier this year. The Senate level was $74.8 billion, which was higher than the $74.3 billion provided in the current fiscal year 2020. So the baseline should at least be a somewhat significant increase over last year's levels. Both the House and Senate included $1 billion funding level for the popular build discretionary grants, which locals can access in addition to states and others. And the House actually included an increase of more than $6 billion to transit programs. While that number will probably not be quite as much of an increase over last year's levels, in the final agreement, we are expecting with a Biden administration incoming to see much more focus on transit funding in the future as well. In addition, we spoke with the House Transportation Committee earlier this week as well. They alluded to possible February action, expecting some infrastructure activity in the first 100 days of a President Biden administration. Largely, they view their framework of the HR 2 Moving Forward Act as a base point for future negotiations there. As we've alluded to in the past, that included a number of new climate-focused initiatives, mobility accessibility enhancements, and a couple of new grant programs as well, running the gamut from transit to highway and other modes. Some of these included community transportation investment grants and other things that locals can access, and that will really expand the pot outside of just the sort of build grants that currently exist. We've also been working closely with Lindsay on the federal platform for the upcoming year, and I'm not sure, Lindsay, if you were going to get more into that.
It's the next agenda item.
Okay, great. That's sort of the lay of the land right now. If there are any questions, be happy to address them.
Anybody have any questions?
Mark, do you want to hop on and give your update?
Yes, thank you, Lindsay. Good morning, commissioners. Sacramento is not quite as firmly am I hearable? So Sacramento is not quite as formed yet in terms of what may be coming up for the next session. As a reminder, we had a little bit of changes in the composition of the legislature due to the elections. We had one Republican, surprisingly, from Orange County who was defeated by a Democrat, and then Josh Newman, who had been recalled, who's a Democrat senator, succeeded in displacing the person that had replaced him. So modest change in the state Senate. In terms of the leadership of the committees, we do know that with the termed out or the end of Senator Bell's term, he's moved on, and we're waiting to see what the Senate may do to replace him as the chair of the Transportation Committee. And hometown favorite Assembly Member Jim Frazier is returning as the chair of the Transportation Committee in the Assembly. And I think I'll just close a little bit with a couple of calendar reminders, because these are important things that I'm going to watch for and make sure that Lindsay and I are on top of in the coming month. Next week, December 7th, the legislature will reconvene. It's their biennial sessions start on that date. The Assembly is going to be meeting in the Golden One Center, where the Kings play basketball, because of the need to be socially distanced and having adequate space. The Senate, however, is with a smaller number of senators at 40, will be able to have their reconvening done in the state capitol. So that'll all take place. And then following that, They will adjourn. There will be the ability for bills to be introduced as early as next week when they do convene. And then when they return on January 4th, you'll see the groundswell of some legislation being introduced. January 10th is probably the biggest date we will see coming up. That's the date that the governor, by constitutional requirement, has to submit a proposed budget. So we're all anxious to see what he's going to put forth in that budget, and given the impact that that the COVID response has had on state resources, even though they're coming back in a nice sort of way, it's probably still nowhere near what we need. So it'll be an interesting rollout. And finally, just remind you in terms of technical aspects of the legislature, January 22nd is the date by which bills that need to be drafted have to go to council, and February 19th is the last date to introduce bills. And there is talk again of having very limited authority for the introduction or the number of bills to be introduced. I think with that, I'll bring it to a close, and we can, Liz, you can move on to the next agenda item when it's convenient. Thank you.
Any questions from committee members? Are there any comments from members of the public? Okay, and I don't believe this requires a vote. There's no action on this. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item. Approval of the proposed 2021 state and federal legislative advocacy programs. Lindsay will present.
Yes. Hi, commissioners again. Every year we bring you a proposed state and federal advocacy platform for adoption. And this may be similar to something you do at your cities or other regional bodies that you sit on. And in our case, these serve as guidelines for Gus and Jason and Mark to use when they're evaluating legislation that gets introduced. And so you'll see from the pages in your packet that these platforms are intentionally broad. They're intended to be a big tent and just give a sense of an overview of the types of issues that we're keeping our eye on or watching or pushing for. And it is intentional that it's broad because we do, as always, bring positions on every bill back to APC and the board for your approval or your position on that. So this is not any intention to circumvent the process that we currently have. This is really a document that our advocates can use to help start discussions that they might need to have with folks, and also so that they're not having to read thousands and thousands of bills. They have an idea of what we're looking to accomplish this year. So I'm not going to go through every piece of both of these documents, but I just want to point out a few highlights. So on the federal advocacy platform, as you heard Gus say, the Moving Forward Act, the Surface Transportation Reauthorization process is already getting started. And so we are definitely keeping our eye on that. We're trying to look at what has already been published, to see what might be advantageous for us. If there are things in there that we need to change, we're trying to get our foot in the door to have those conversations now. That's going to be a big piece of our work. So you'll see that that takes up a large piece of real estate on the federal platform. We're also focused on streamlining efforts. As you know, time is money when it comes to building transportation projects. So that's always been a focus for us at the federal level. And we're working hard to be sure that the policies in place for innovation are keeping up with the types of projects and programs that we're looking to roll out here in Contra Costa. So those are some of our focuses at the federal level. At the state level, we're always watching that transportation funding to make sure that nobody's trying to take away from the hard-earned pot that's there. And also we're kind of renewing our focus this year and trying to make sure that every dollar that rightfully belongs to Contra Costa gets allocated to Contra Costa through all the various programs at the state and regional levels. So that's something we'll be spending some time on. I also want to point out that, you know, there's an item in here about supporting part-time transit lanes on Interstate 680. You've heard Tim talk about our Innovate 680 program, and part of that is allowing transit buses to use the shoulder during congested times, and that is going to require some partnership amongst a lot of different agencies. And there has been some efforts legislatively in the past to get something going. And so we're going to continue to build on those so that the policies and the program that's acceptable to all the partners, like Caltrans, DMV, CHP, CCTA, and our transit partners is in place by the time we're ready to roll that program out as part of Innovate 680. And so with that, I won't go through everything, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And you know, the advocacy team is here as well to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from committee members? Newell?
Yeah, Lindsay, thank you for this. And to Gus and Mark, really excited everything you guys do for us. Lindsay, would you think on what I see on the upper left corner of the federal, where it says preserve local sales tax dollars to fund local improvements, shouldn't that also be in our state priority list? I mean, it sort of has maybe something to do at a federal level, but it's really more of top priority. As you know, the state is looking on every way they can, every dollar that we've collected, they consider it public funds. I would just think it might make sense it's on both. That's the only suggestion I have.
We can certainly call that out on the state one. Yes.
Any other questions? Any comments from members of the public?
No comments.
Okay, well, this is an action item, so I need a motion.
Move approval.
Okay, motion from
Askew.
Second.
Second from Newell. Arner. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Okay, Committee Member Ernrich,
Yes.
Committee Member Taylor,
Yes.
Alternate Member Askew,
Yes.
Vice Chair Geringer,
Yes.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Interstate 680 State Route 4 Interchange Improvements Phase 3, Project 6001. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. I got project status update. Ivan Ramirez will present this item. I thought we lost you for a minute, but you're just switching to
Yes, good morning, Chair and committee members. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me well. Thank you very much. Like you mentioned in the introduction, this is a information item regarding the I-680 State Route 4 Interchange Improvements Project Phase 3. And when I brought an item back in June of this year to approve the stop of retention of the stoppage of the collection of retention for the contractor, I also provided an update on the construction progress, and there were a number of issues that raised concern from the board. So I was asked to come back and provide an update, and here we are. So as an overview of the project, this project began on November 14th, 2018. The engineer's estimate was $80.6 million, and as you can see on the line below, the contractor actually bid at $83,305,000. So we were already a step behind when the project started in regards to funding. The contractor, the winning bid was Brosman & Wall, and the duration is 675 working days. So the construction allotment that the board approved for this project is $97,702,000, $702,223. No, it's not advancing. Okay. So I'm going to start with talking about a few issues that we encountered this summer in the field that were a challenge to overcome. And I'm going to start with the Solano Bridge, and I'm going to very briefly describe the issue. What's going on here is this over here on the left is the new bridge. This is the existing bridge, and we're widening the existing bridge, and we are supposed to at some point connect to the old bridge. Now this strip over here that you see over here, that's supposed to remain on connecting the two bridges until a time where this bridge has had the opportunity to shrink and also rotate, because it's be put under pre-stressing loadings. So as you can see here on this detail, these are called strands, and they're elastic steel. And what we do is we pull on those strands, we release them in tension, and that provides compression on the bridge. And in essence, what that does is just provide more strength for the bridge for the length that it has. The longer it has, the more difficult it is to support. The strands have supported. So what happened is, in this case, is that the contractor proceeded to stress the bridge while it was already connected here, the abutments. And of course, when you put a load and you haven't designed to restrain it, then it's going to have some effects. And in our instance, in our case, it created some cracks at several locations on the bridge. And while we were investigating what went wrong here, we also ended up discovering that there were some rebars that were not present. They were not necessarily structurally a concern, but nonetheless, it created some issues because they are supposed to provide protection against aesthetics deterioration. If you don't have enough rebar, then the concrete's going to crack. Like, again, not in a structural sense, but for aesthetics. So the repair is we had to go ahead and separate the bridge to relieve those stresses. Then we had to go back and fix the concrete. We had to remove some and replace it, epoxy some, put the missing rebars. And now we're at the point right now where we are going to start again restressing the bridge. So the effect of this on the field has been that it's been a big issue. We had to work very closely with the designer. We had to work very closely with Caltrans. We had to get to the bottom of what went wrong. But overall, this bridge was not on the critical path, so it hasn't created a delay to the overall project. While we were dealing with that issue, we also encountered another issue and the bridge down the road. This is a Grayson Bridge. This portion of the structure here, it's called the band, and that basically supports the superstructure. And as you can see, we're near a creek, and that puts some additional design requirements on the bridge. And that requirement was that at those bends, we were supposed to have epoxy coated reinforcement. So epoxy coated reinforcement provides additional protection against corrosion. And in this case, several bars in the longitudinal direction, as well as the bars tying it all together, were missed to the extent that they were not epoxy coated reinforcement. So this is the way it's supposed to look. This is a bend that was actually with the steel placed correctly. So in this particular instance, the actual lack of epoxy coating was not a big deal as far as the structural capacity of the bridge. That was never in question. But Caltrans was very concerned about the long-term effects of having potential corrosion inside those band caps. So through a lot of work and effort of several people, we were able to determine and have Caltrans accept that in fact, we didn't need the epoxy coated reinforcement in there. So even though it was a big exercise and there was a lot of issue about stopping work because some of the bends were already poor, they were carrying traffic, we had to go back and we're going to tear them down. Well, it turns out that we were able to work very hard, diligently, and we were able to determine that it was not needed. But nonetheless, it had the potential to create a lot of delays on the project, and those were successfully mitigated. The last big issue that we were dealing with, and again, all of these three issues were happening concurrently. It's like, this is a big, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit, too fast there. So this is an overview picture of the State 680 over here and State Route 4. And at this location here with the two yellow lines, we were supposed per contract to install two huge reinforced boxes to basically collect stormwater so it doesn't all rain at the same time while it's raining. So it collects it and drains it out little by little so that the creeks or water bodies receiving this water, this stormwater, doesn't overwhelm it or overpollute it. What happened is that the contractor let us know, made us aware, put us on notice that there were hard and difficult excavation as expected. Now keep in mind that these boxes are between 60 inches in diameter, 54 inches in diameter, and they were supposed to be excavated to a depth of about 20 to 30 feet. So it was a very meaningful excavation. So that was a big concern. So with that information, we retained the services of one of our consultants, MV5, and they went ahead and brought in a team, and they performed a seismic refraction survey. And I'm not an expert on this subject, but you send seismic waves, and depending on how they come back, they're able to determine how hard the rock or the soil is going to be just below the surface. So one of the findings was that, in fact, we're going to have difficulty excavating, and it couldn't be done under conventional methods. And that's a big deal because nowhere in the contract did we alert bidders that unconventional methods were going to be needed to perform the excavations. So in essence, it's a different site condition, significant. And they determined that some of the excavation was going to require blasting, rock drilling, rock splitting. And in addition to that, we were going to find floaters. These are big boulders that are in the middle of several layers of soil. And those were also going to require hydraulic hammering or blasting. So here's a picture of those floaters that were expected to be found. This is something that was found during initial excavation when the contractor first was able to establish that maybe there was something down on the ground that wasn't expected. This is another representation of the hard soil. That gray dust is not to be expected. That's just steel grinding against hard rock. And otherwise it would be brown dust. That's what would be expected there. And lastly, these are the outcrops that are visible where the excavation is going to happen. So to some extent, we should perhaps have been able to determine early on, perhaps during the design phase, that we needed to do a little further investigation. But through all of that, our executive director contacted somebody at the water board, the changing these stormwater systems, especially the permanent ones, requires water board approval as well as CalTRO's approval. And we were able to work a change so that we no longer have to perform these excavations, therefore minimizing significant impacts to the project. And what we're going to do instead is put above ground retaining systems. These are called bioswales, and basically they collect water and then little by little they sip on the ground. And we're gonna be able to exchange those concrete boxes for this type of system. So those are some of the challenges in addition to, the normal day-to-day checking, confirming, asking, coordinating issues that were going on this summer. So now I'm going to move on to some of the progress that was made in spite of all these things. These are photos of the girder installation. These happen at night because we have to take the highway right next to this work location to unload them. This is how it looked. This is how it looked when we were erecting those girders. This is the deck, the rebar for the deck in place just prior to the pouring of the concrete. We also did a lot of paving this summer. This is roadway paving, concrete paving. We this summer, since we last presented to you in June, we poured 7,259 cubic yards. That's about 2.25 Olympic-sized pools, just in 5 months. This is a photo of the machine that it's used to pour the concrete, and this is a photo of how it looks as they're finishing the work somewhere in the middle of the morning. I also wanted to show some interesting pictures about the median. As you know, we're actually widening the roadway and we have to maintain traffic. So we had to provide this system whereby last season, we constructed this section of road and the traffic is now going in both directions. And now we have to come back and fill this. And we have to do it very quickly because the creek window is not close. So therefore we use something called cylinder concrete that provides the filling at a reasonable price. Obviously dirt and compacting perhaps cheaper. But as you can see here, it provides the grade. So we finally put the structural section as we approach the bridges. I also want to provide an update of the progress that was made since we presented to you last June. This is where it was at the time. We had constructed these, this structure, this median structure, and this structure, which are on-ramp and off-ramp over here. And we were ready to build these bridges in the medium. And that's in fact what we have done. And now we're getting ready to open up this section of traffic in the near future. This is Walnut Creek. We hadn't even started work, and there we are. We're almost done. And as you can see here, what I was mentioning previously, there's a strip here of separation between the old bridge and the new bridge over here as well, because they haven't stressed the bridges and they cannot connect them. This is Solano Way. This is the bridge where the cracks developed. You can see that we had advanced very much at this location, and unfortunately, the progress since has been slowed down by the issues that we encounter at those locations. One last point, on the east end of the project, there's about a mile of road that has been completed all the way to the end. And this is something that we're working very closely with the contractor and Caltrans. We might be able to open up this, what will be an HOV lane, hopefully by the end of the year. And will provide some relief to the traveling public, even as we have not completed the project. So, and that brings us to the important question of budget. When we came back in June, came to you in June, we had expected completion date of September 2nd. And these numbers here were showing that even though we were at 55% of the bid items completed, in other words, the normal schedule work, we were at 84% of the contingency. And I think that's what alerted a lot of the board members and put them basically concerned them where we were at. So, but I'm happy to report that even though we have slipped a couple of days, I would say about 13 days on the schedule, we are actually ahead of schedule compared to what the expected time for the expected work is to be completed. We're ahead. So we're looking good. We're 77% complete, basically. And our contingency has not deteriorated in any meaningful way since. So even though we had all these issues and we continue to have issues, I think we have found ourselves in a position where, although we're concerned, we're not yet alarmed. So in summary, the construction budget continues to be threatened. There is a lot of work still ahead of us. There's good news in the sense that basically we're out of the ground. So most of the risk is where you cannot see things. And if you excavate, you haven't excavated everywhere, then you might have risks ahead of you, but hopefully we have most of those behind us. We also had numerous challenges. The plant specifications contain ambiguities, inconsistencies. To some extent, it's a big project, $90 million. They're expected, and but nonetheless it requires a lot of management. And as I showed earlier, we have had construction quality issues, and we're trying to get to the bottom of those and make sure that they don't happen again. We have numerous different site conditions. We have had COVID-19 restrictions. We also have had large and impactful people turnover. So their project manager, contractors has moved on. Our resident engineer and our structural representative has moved on as well. Good news, the project, like I mentioned earlier, is still on schedule. We are out of the creeks, and that was a very important piece of the work, because you don't want to be delayed on the creeks, because then that extends it to another season. We have had impacts due to wildfires, because CHP is not available to support us. Sometimes Caltrans is not available to support us, and that is also true when they have happened riots. We cannot go out and do work. We're restricted. But nonetheless, we continue to plow ahead and continue with progress. And we have made it in a very safe way. There have been no recordables on this project. So that's my summary of the project, and I am open to any questions. Let me stop my share here.
Are there questions or Newell?
Yeah, Ivan, always love to hear your presentations. A couple of things. Didn't we have, it was just on the consent calendar, didn't we have a change from Caltrans for the center medium, for the height of that? It was like $66,000. That came up as well. Ivan, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm sorry, I don't remember that specific change order.
Okay, I thought Caltrans changed the K, I call it the K rail, the old down the center. They changed the height of that, and then there was a small change order for that. That's one thing. The concern I had is actually about concrete design. You know, I took concrete design from T.Y. Lin and Bressler at UC Berkeley in the engineering department. And one of the things we learned as T.Y. Lin was inventing post-stress construction, that the steel that you use for there has a different expansion rate than traditional steel, because static steel is cheaper, low tension strength. So we've designed a bridge, to me, that's going to cause, I mean, obviously somehow on the design, we're taking a post-tension structure parallel to, I call it a static traditional design. The steel, they're both concrete. So in theory, they're going to move similar rates, except the steel will move at a completely different rate. So it's always going to bounce up and down, and particularly just thermally. So aren't we, even though we post-tension to get it, we think it's static, tie it in because we're making a rigid connection to the existing, that's always going to crack because they have to, by design, move at different rates forever.
So yeah, so I am not an expert designer, and everything that you said it resonates with me. There is a gap of so that strip that I show you with the river was exposed. That doesn't get poured for 60 days, and I think that in the design phase they expect like over 90% of that differential, or I shouldn't say of that shrinkage in movement to occur. So when they tie it together, I think that the tying is strong enough for the remaining 10 to not cause a lot of problems. So it's restraining enough.
It's risky.
So that's, but we do it all the time, Commissioner, and it really doesn't fail until you do stuff like we did here, which is, we restrain it.
680 overpasses and stuff where we did the same, not we, Caltrans did them, and they pop and crack all the time. I mean, huge cracks. I just think that, that it's not a bad place to have an expansion joint and design for it in the right way is, to me, safer. It's great to have those tied together, but then, you would want to use the same methodology so that they expand and contract at the same rate. And then the second question I had, so I appreciate, how did, on a project, we're paying millions of dollars for a construction manager. So their job is to oversee, and they're actually doing the inspections and everything. So how do we end up with, 80% of, the epoxy coated steel, and all of a sudden they're not doing it? I mean, how did they let them go that far? Are they not on the job site? I mean, I could see them getting a couple of pieces, but that seemed to be either that's a design problem, a spec problem, or an oversight problem. And it seems to me it's oversight. And who was doing that?
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct, Commissioner. It's a quality control, quality assurance on the issue. The contractor and their subcontractors are supposed to be performing quality control. They are the ones that are ultimately responsible for building it per plan and spec, contractually required to do so. And on top of that, we have a quality assurance layer, which is the one that we contract at our normal construction management services. And, getting to the bottom of it, when you think about it, Commissioner, we follow very closely the Caltrans guidelines, and Caltrans has stacks of quality assurance that seem to work very well. I think the failure here is people. You can put all the controls you want, and maybe there's a issue with the company culture as well, as far as not being diligent enough, training and enforcing their employees to do certain tasks. But the end effect for us is that the people that had actually organize the inspection of this work, and the actual inspection of this work left the site. So they're no longer available. So we were an entirely new team, and they're saying to us, "Well, we didn't watch this work. This they did it, and they're already gone." So so I attribute this to people, Commissioner, and it brings up an interesting point, because I've been talking to my colleagues in the industry, and it seems like the construction industry is getting to that point that we've been talking about it for a long time, that we don't have enough people coming into the industry, and the qualified good people are getting harder and harder to find. So I don't know if this has anything to do with that, but that's certainly a concern. From our end, from the authority staff, we're trying to see what additional controls, believe it or not, we have to put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because at some point, you gotta have another guy looking over the shoulder of the guy that you're paying. It becomes a little excessive, right? So, but yeah, those are excellent questions. I hope I answered the best I could. Hopefully that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What I hear is lessons learned on that one. It's obvious that it sounds like that wasn't our problem. So I hope we didn't pay for all of that negotiation and stuff. I mean, truthfully, that it's clear. If it's in the specs, it's there. They're supposed to do it. Was it clear on that joint that it's supposed to be post tension before they tied it in? If not, lessons learned. But I think there was a shared cost responsibility somewhere down the line, and I appreciate it.
So in this case, Commissioner, we don't expect to pay for anything. The contractor has, in fact, accepted responsibility for all of it, and that's because they didn't follow what was stipulated on the contract document. So we don't expect to pay anything. And in fact, we have helped them mitigate a lot of their issues, because we obviously have Caltrans as a third party that's involved as the owner, that has a lot to say about how we resolve these issues. So but there's cost. There's other. In regards to cost, there's many other issues where we do have our hands in, but not this one.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well done. Thanks, Ivan. Appreciate all your work.
Other questions or comments from committee members? Bob.
Yeah, I was going to ask Ivan. Obviously I'm a novice. Thank God you listen to Newell. You learn a tremendous amount. But I guess the question I would ask: who looks at the final contract in the sense of issues like that? Is it attorneys? Is it engineers? Is it CCTA? Who does kind of a summary on what is covered and what isn't? Did that question make sense?
Unmute, Ivan. Ivan, unmute.
I apologize for that.
There you go.
So I think what you're trying to get to the bottom of is, if this was a costly issue, who will be responsible for the cost that will entail? And there's several layers. It starts in the field. People start pointing fingers. Then it gets elevated to management. It's not resolved. Then you bring in the experts, right? And the experts try to resolve it for you. You go to mediation, and maybe you even get the lawyers involved, and you go to trial. But that it's not a very efficient way to solve issues. So we try to keep it as low as possible, less expensive, and you're closer to the facts. So that's how a issue of big magnitude will get resolved. I don't know if I answered your question, and I'm happy to answer more.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to, there ultimately has to be some type of written, signed, sealed, and delivered objective, and I'm just trying to figure out who does the final signed, sealed, delivered. Or is it, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that, okay, we might have, I don't know who messed up, whoever did what on this project, but do we learn from this project for the next project? And then I'll just continue the questions. In other words, I'm talking about preventable. You take a COVID shot to kind of prevent you from getting COVID. So is there a plan in place per se on maybe one of the next contracts, and then I'll get off it. I'm just trying to figure out how do we avert something of this nature happening. Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you, Commissioner. So yeah, so that's the question that it's out there for us to try to resolve. The processes and the people are there, so there was nothing missing. It was just people doing what people do sometimes, which is they don't capture, or they're not diligent, or they're not paying attention, and so on. And that's the nature, and that's kind of hard to police. You can, I guess you have to interview everybody and watch them closely. But it was all, in this particular case, it was all about the people, and it was nothing about what the plan said, and it was nothing about what was expected to be done, and having the people there doing it. It was all in place. It's just along the line, several layers of people missed it. It's kind of hard to believe. It's actually discomforting to know that this happened. So what we're trying to do is see if we can implement additional quality assurance steps or processes in addition to the ones we already have, to see if we can prevent this from happening. That's the best way I can answer it.
Randy?
Let me add a little bit to that. Ivan's spot on. So this project is a very complex project that requires a lot of different traffic switches. You got multiple bridges under construction. You have work windows that you have to get in and out of a bridge. You've got a schedule that the contractor is trying to adhere to. That's based on the number of working days in that contract. And so what we've learned is we've got to do a better job, and it's like an older facility. We've got to do a better job of understanding what the existing elevation, what the existing structures look like, what their elevations are, so that we provide better information to the contractors, so that they're not grinding here to meet this elevation here. And so you've got 4 other phases of that interchange that you're going to have to work on, all the clover leaves, the different connectors. And so we've learned a lot about exactly what Ivan was talking about, doing a better job, both QC, quality control, and quality assurance. One's the contractor's responsibility, one's the owner's responsibility. And so you're going to put that in place as you build phases 1, or you design phases 1, 4, and 2A. So that's the next project that we just recently received an allocation of $18 million from Senate Bill $1 that we got a competitive grant yesterday, I think it was. And so that project will be in design, and Tim and his team, or whoever, is going to be focused in on making sure that they understand the issues that we faced here, so they don't make the same mistake on the other 4 phases of that project. And actually, it could be another 6 with the direct connectors going from 4 to 680. And so there's a lot been learned, but Ivan's absolutely correct. He's turned over the staff, the CM firm. We're a staff of 19 now, so we don't send people out there. We hire consultants, and the beauty of that is when they don't perform, they're gone. And so Ivan has shipped a lot of the original people off that project, and we've got a new team in there. So we've learned that, and so this is a very complex project, and so I think there's been a lot to learn. And then the last part of that question that you had, Mayor or Commissioner Taylor, is that the contractor, when they feel like they've been harmed, they'll file what they call a notice of potential claim, NOPC, and then we'll start working on that based on an analysis of the damages based on either schedule and or resources.
Okay, and other questions? I had a couple kind of along the lines of what Newell and Bob were talking about, and the first has to do with lessons learned. And one of the things Randy just mentioned is that we have other projects coming up, and they're going to be, they're going to have new people, and obviously some lessons were learned, but the question is, are they going to reside in some individual's institutional memory who might be gone? Or are they going to be somewhere else? So the question I have is, is there some way that that at the end of these projects we collect lessons learned and put them somewhere where they're available for the next people to look at, and maybe even require them to go down and use those as a checklist for the design and construction of the next project? Is there a formal process for that?
Yeah, Commissioner. So I'll try to answer that question on the construction side. There's a lot to learn. I think some of what Randy was speaking to also has to do with the design phase, where also there's a lot of lessons that we have learned, and I know that staff, Tim in particularly, has been working on a quality management plan that now we're going to be asking our designers to adhere to, because it appears that whatever quality control plan or quality management plan that each firm has, perhaps it's not good enough with the standards that we need to set for our projects. So on that side, I know we're clear. On the construction side, we're doing a similar thing as far as catching a lot of these errors. So we hire the CM firms to come in ahead of the construction. We normally bring them in a little early. We give them the plans and specifications, and they have their own institutional knowledge with qualified people that review this for inconsistencies and issues that might come up. And in fact, a lot of times they even find better ways to do things. Like for instance, the 680, they eliminated the lane drop that was expected to be there. So I know that when I put a project out, I definitely always go back to the lessons that we have learned. Keep in mind though that I've been here for almost 8 years, but it takes about 5 or 6 years to close down the project to the very end. So there's a lot of things that you're learning all along the way, and not until now is that we're beginning to implement a lot of those lessons learned into the projects going forward. So to your point, we're always learning. I know staff, I know Randy, I know Tim, myself, both staff are always mindful of the things that we have learned, because there's a lot of things that we have learned. So I don't know if you want to add something, Randy or Tim, in regards to this issue.
Well, what I was really getting at is where do those lessons learned reside? Is there a binder or a computer file somewhere, so that when the next team comes in, you have the designers and you have the construction managers, and you give them this binder, and this is, here's a compilation of the lessons learned from our last 6 projects, and as a part of your scope of work, we want you to review those and comment on whether whether you have designed or plan to manage this project in a way that will take care of those issues. So I was really addressing some formal way of preserving these and folding them into the next project, and not depending on an individual's institutional memory. So I
think that's a very good point.
It just seems like there's a place.
So maybe I can just jump in.
So definitely.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I can just jump in here real quick. So the quality assurance program that we're finalizing right now, there is actually a section of what we're calling best practices. So all of these lessons learned that we take away from all these projects, we put in, these are the best practices that we need to institute on all these projects moving forward. For example, subsurface investigations, making sure that you're doing a boring at infiltration basins, making sure you're doing a boring at every foundation, every footing in the contract. So these are all the best practices. We're learning things. We need to make sure that these best practices get implemented through all of the next contracts, all the next design contracts. And then the quality assurance program, and once it's finalized, we can bring it back to the authority board and present it. But the idea is to have a multi-level quality assurance program based on the complexity of the project, the cost of the project. And so for like a project of, like, for example, the next phase of 684, that project will actually, based on our quality assurance program, will actually require some sort of independent verification of the design plans as we're moving forward through the design process. So as we have our designer design the plans, at some point, we'll actually hand those plans off to a completely different independent consultant to do a completely independent verification and review of the entire plan set. And so, and then also instituting other levels of quality control, quality assurance on all the projects, and making sure we have a really robust quality assurance program to make sure that we have a good set of plans going out into construction.
Okay, great. And by the way, that was a great presentation. Obviously, people took a lot of interest in it. One thing that I think people were asking about that wasn't addressed, maybe it's too much information, but those various hiccups that caused delays or resulted in extra costs, it would have been helpful, I think, to understand which of those ended up being paid for by the owner and which ones were absorbed by the contractor. And if any of them involved disputes over who's going to pay for it, absorb the cost, and kind of how that played out. So that would have been an interesting part to add. And then the last one on one of those slides that had a list of the causes of various issues, I saw riot, and I didn't hear that addressed. So I was just curious, what riot did we have out there?
Yes, Commissioner. What happened is not quite a riot at the location of the project site. What happens is that we rely on the California Highway Patrol to allow us to have the lane closures to protect the workers from errant vehicles. And one day I will be happy to share all the crazy pictures of what people do out there. So when CHP is no longer able to support us because they're being distracted by other events, then we will cease to work just for the safety of the worker. So that's why I mean when we were impacted by the riots.
What riot was it that you needed protection from CHP?
Well, no, sorry. Sorry, I probably didn't speak as clearly. So what happens if there's a riot, let's say in Oakland, and I think in fact it was Oakland.
Oh, okay. Right.
Then the CHP is mobilized to that location to patrol.
Okay.
And then they're no longer available to us. That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually got lucky during the George Floyd protests, I think it was, where we were told not to work, and we were kind of pushing back on the California Highway Patrol, but we went ahead and not worked. And that whole protest spilled out onto Interstate 680 and during the pandemic. So there wasn't all that traffic on 680. And we had planned to take a lane closure that night, but we were darn lucky that we didn't have contractors out there. There was protesters on Interstate 680. They shut the freeway down right here, just outside of Walnut Creek. And so those things impact the ability to do work.
Okay, got the picture. Any other questions or comments? Are there any comments from the public? Okay, this is not an action item, it's a status report. So we'll move to the next item. Interstate 680 high occupancy vehicle lane completion and express lane conversion project 8001. Project status update. And once again, Ivan will present.
Yes, Commissioner. Let me share my screen one more time here. I hope once again you can see my screen nicely. So this is another update on the construction project, and I just want to remind the committee that these are the two biggest projects that we have ever put out to construction. CCTA, one is over $80-90 million. This is about $65 million. So there was a lot of work going on over the last couple of years. So just a quick review of the project. The engineer's estimate was $7.6 million. We got a low bid of $64.5. The winning bidder was Bay City's Paving and Grading. And we originally had the scheduled completion date late next year. And we came back to you in I think, March of this year, and we offer an opportunity to accelerate the work and have the work completed by December of 2020. And I'm very happy to report that we have done so. Let me give you a little overview of the project and some of the things that we did. These are the typical signs that help manage the express lane and will help manage it in the future, because as of right now, given the fact that the electronic system is not in place for tolling, we have opened it up as a HO2 only lane, and also we alert the public that toll testing is occurring. So even though the civil work is done where people can use that lane, the actual express lanes operation cannot start until this work is completed, and that's under the responsibility of BAFA. This is a picture of South Main Street, the loop, where this is how it looked prior to construction started. And I'm gonna show some of the improvements that were made. But it's the same location. We're gonna have a double lane here. There's a tighter radius to create more room here for traffic. And this is gonna be storage for future metering light, it appears. I would also like you to pay attention to all the planting that is going on in these areas here, because we removed a lot of trees and now we are required to do the planting. And just to remind the committee that we actually did that work as a change order under this contract, as opposed to putting it out to bid in the future. This is a picture of the work as it was when we came back to you in March along South Main Street in Walnut Creek, where the retaining wall was still being built. And it's a picture of the work completed now. And you can see Walnut Creek got a nice resurfacing part of the project. We also finished a lot of paving, and there's going to be some photos about all the paving that we did. And also you can see here all the replanting that we're doing along the entire project. This is an overview of the project near North Main Street. And I want to highlight this double white line here. These are the buffer zones. You can see that it ends here. There's two of them in the project. One is south of Route 24. And this one north of 24, and that is to prevent traffic from merging in and out at will. Basically, you cannot restrict them to certain areas, so that improves the operation of the express lane. Here's another picture, but looking in the opposite direction, where again you see the buffer zones here. And the paving that we did under this project basically started north of Monument, which is up here. This is a picture just south of the previous location. And I want to highlight the biggest improvement that was made under this contract, where we added this number 6 lane. And that has been the biggest improvement. This is where staff hears more about from the public and our consultants hear from the public. Putting this additional lane here and not having that drop has significantly improved the traffic performance at these locations. I wanted to give you an update on the things that we were looking at when we came back to you. At that point, we had already obtained Caltrans approval for striping and signage, so that we could open the express lane. Open up the HOV lane ahead of the express lane. And we were ready to begin PG&E coming in and completing their work and power up. And we are happy to report that that happened on schedule. That was not an easy task to accomplish given PG&E's record, but there was a lot of effort made by several people in the project to make sure that PG&E stayed on track, and they were able to stay on track. So that allowed us to make significant progress on the work and deliver a year early. We also knew we had to perform the punch list ahead of Transcore. Transcore is the contractor doing work for BAFA in order for the express lane to open. So we had to finish our work, turn it over to them so they could do their work, and we have successfully accomplished that. And MTC revised their tolling ordinance. That was a requirement that they needed to have in order to open up the HOV lane as an express lane. There are a couple of check marks that remain to be filled, and that is because work that Transcore is doing for MTC has lagged a little bit from what they're expected to be done at this point. But my understanding is that that work is going to be completed in the spring, and therefore, hopefully, the express lane will be completed at that time. We told you about risks that we expected that might manifest themselves, and fortunately, the supply of labor was mitigated. There was no issues related to COVID-19 having impacts on the crews. Everybody practiced safe distance and other work practices, so nobody was contaminated in any way, shape, or form. The other one was the service connections by PG&E, and I already mentioned the work that was done on that. Now, this is an ongoing issue. Like I mentioned earlier, the MTC is working very hard to resolve these issues so that they can complete their work and open up the express lane. And I hope this graph looks familiar to you. This is where we offer to pay for the change order, the acceleration. The change order were going to cost $1 million for the contractor to bring additional crews, additional equipment, and accelerate their work. Originally, we expected the savings. So we were going to pay $1 million to accelerate, but there were going to be savings from the construction budget. And we were expecting $1.6 million to come from construction management, oversight, and design. And we actually ended up saving $1.7 million. Change orders that were already written, and I will show it in the next slide what those change orders were. We expected to use that money, and because we shortened the duration by a year, we don't need it. So we ended up saving $290,000 as opposed to $300,000. Similar to the bid items that are time related, we were expected to save $100,000, but we're going to end up saving $75,000. And we did pay $1 million. So the overall savings is just above $1 million. But I do want to note that the savings that we're showing here are net of the landscape work. In other words, had we not this landscape work happening in this contract and we would have pushed that to another contract, then the numbers here would have shown larger than what they are. But in effect, we saved $1 million. So these are some of the things that we don't have to pay for anymore. This is maintenance of stormwater. Obviously, a lot of accidents on the site. We're also paying for utilities. We'll turn them over to the owners sooner, so we start paying those, and also some roadway maintenance that we're responsible for because we acquired the maintenance responsibility while it's in construction. So in effect, I continue to believe that we have a win-win-win situation. Obviously, Bay City's got $1 million. I don't think it's all profit, but they definitely probably got some profit out of the change order. They deliver. The public gains in several ways. We talked about the lane that's open, that restricted highway portion is no longer there. Randy has mentioned the open grade, the final paving that we did, which is quieter. In addition to that, it prevents hydroplaning when it's raining because it seeps in, and so it's a safer roadway after we're done with it. Now, also the roadway condition wasn't very poor. It was in very bad shape, so we were able to get a nice riding surface, and we got out of the way sooner. CCTA, of course, wins because, as we deliver the project a year ahead of schedule, and NPC BayFi is going to have the opportunity to start collecting revenue from the express lane, hopefully a year sooner. So with that, I am open to questions.
Really nice job.
Okay, that's the kind of report we like to hear.
Yeah, those came out. Everything.
Are there questions or comments?
No, you and Newell both said it quickly. I'm sure Ivan felt much better giving that report than the previous one. So great job. Good news all around.
Well done.
Also, Walnut Creek thanks you very much because it went smoothly. We did not hear lots of complaints like it started out to be. And so thank you very much for all of the mitigation that you did to make this as easy as possible for the city.
Are there any comments from the public?
I see no comments from the public.
Okay, we'll move to the next item, and this is Interstate 680 High Occupancy Vehicle Lane Completion and Express Lane Conversion, Project 8001. Approval of construction work and issue final payment to Bay City's Paving and Grading for construction services. And Ivan will present this item.
Thank you again, Commissioner. So this is an action item where staff is asking approval of resolution 2033P, which will authorize acceptance of construction work under agreement number 491 as being complete and satisfactory, authorize the release of all retention to the contractor, and authorize staff to proceed with contract closeout pending the receipt of the project acceptance documentation from the California Department of Transportation. So basically, Commissioners, we are asking you to accept the work, and Bay Cities will be basically done with the work, and they will be able to provide them with their retention money. That's what the action item is.
Are there any questions?
Move to accept.
Second,
From Arnerick,
and second from Geringer.
second from Geringer. Are there any public comments?
I see no public comments.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Arnrich,
Yes.
Committee Member Taylor,
Yes.
Alternate Member Haskew,
Yes.
Vice Chair Geringer,
Yes,
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
The next item on the agenda is Interstate 680 High Occupancy Vehicle Lane Completion and Express Lane Conversion. Authorization to execute amendment number 1 to agreement number 448 with WSP USA Inc. for construction management services. Ivan will present.
Yeah, thank you again, Commissioner. Yeah, so this is an amendment to WSP, who is the construction management firm that managed the Express Lanes project. And basically, we have to extend their contract because it's expiring here at the end of the year. But in addition to that, we're increasing the scope a little bit because they're going to be managing the plan establishment period, which is 2 years after perhaps the end of this year, where they're going to be watching and making sure that those plans take hold. But in addition to that, we took this opportunity to take back $1.3 million of the $1 million that I showed earlier, so that can go back to their sourcers. So with that, I'm asking for approval to approve Amendment 1 for additional scope and also reduced the budget for that contract.
Any questions from committee members? Any comments from the public?
I see no comments from the public.
Okay, a motion, please.
Move approval.
Motion by Haskew,
second by Geringer.
second by Geringer. Roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Arnrich,
Yes.
Committee Member Taylor,
Yes.
Alternate Member Haskew,
Yes.
Chair Geringer,
Yes,
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is consideration to reinstate the Salary and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee of the Authority Board and authorization to execute agreement number 557 with Coffin Associates to conduct a total compensation study. Terry Ann will present this item.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. This item is being brought before you every 3 years to provide an opportunity to adopt a salary and benefits compensation plan for the upcoming 3 fiscal years. Our current plan expires on June 30th, 2021. We know that these are uncertain times and a lot is going on, but Randy and I discussed the commitment to do this every 3 years, and that time is here again. Seeing that a total compensation study may take 12 to 16 weeks to complete, we want to ensure that there's adequate time for the study and for the Salary and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee's review and input in order to seek approval by June 2021. The study seeks to survey all active authority classifications except the executive director position, against comparable positions with agencies selected for the study. More challenging comparisons for supervisory and managerial positions may require other weighting factors. During the prior study, the board did adopt 9 comparator agencies consisting of the Bay Area Congestion Management Agencies and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. We anticipate the study to be fairly straightforward, and it will ensure that we are competitive and remain an employer of choice. Previously, the ad hoc committee was established for the purpose of providing policy input and review and development of recommendations from the study for the authority board approval. The board is responsible for appointing 5 commissioners to the ad hoc committee. In the past, it consisted of the authority board chair and vice chair, the administration and projects chair, and the planning committee chair, and then 1 additional commissioner. But this is left to the discretion of the board and will be a different approach this year due to some of the roles currently overlapping. The ad hoc committee would likely meet 1 to 3 times in 2021, and it will likely be in a virtual format. For the total compensation study, I did receive quotes from our current on-call human resources consulting team, Regional Government Services, and from Coffin Associates, which was a consulting team that had previously handled many of our prior studies. The quote from COF was more competitive, and the team has vast experience and knowledge working with our agency and similar agencies. Staff is recommending that we reinstitute the Salary and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee, that the board appoint 5 commissioners to the ad hoc committee if they're choosing, and that we authorize the chair to execute agreement number 557 with Coffin Associates to conduct the total compensation study, with the ultimate goal of adopting a salary and benefits compensation plan for authority employees for the period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. That concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Any questions from committee members? Any comments from the public?
I see no comments from the public.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Arnerick,
Second, Heskew.
second by Geringer. Roll call vote, please.
Haskew, second. Okay, so Committee Member Arnerick,
Yes.
Committee Member Taylor,
Yes.
Alternate Member Haskew, Vice Chair Geringer,
Yes.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is correspondence and communications. Any comments or questions on that? Hearing none, we'll move to the chair's comments and reports. The only comment I have is that Bob, we're going to miss you, and we're also going to miss some other commissioners that are not here. You know, you kind of get to be a family on these things, and it's always sad to see somebody go, but on the other hand, I know you're going to have more fun than we are. So there you have it. Next item is commissioners' comments and reports. Are there any?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. You know, we've gone through a lot of money. I never realized what could happen in an organization. But one thing we've always seemed to do, and Newell has taught me much, we each have our own niches. And I want to thank everybody for, number one, educating me. I'd like to thank staff and everybody that's involved, because they really make it knowledgeable, and you learn so much. And we are dealing with the people's funds, and this organization seems to do it in a very admirable way. So I want to thank everybody, and I might be gone, but I won't be out of sight. So thank you again.
We love you, Bob. You're awesome.
You're always welcome to drop by and visit, Bob.
Okay.
Just don't ask any more questions. We don't, I'm teasing.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was going to say, enjoy Twainhart.
Oh, yeah.
Bob, how many years have you been on CCTA?
14.
Whoa.
Whoa.
I did not realize it was that long. Wow.
Well, I was mayor 14 years, and I signed myself with Bob McClary?
Yeah.
Well, there goes our institutional memory. Got to write this stuff down. Okay, moving on. Randy or Tim, do you have any, you have anything you want to cover before we shut down? Okay, that looks like a no. Therefore, we are adjourned at 9:52 a.m.
See everybody.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Oh, I'll see you before then.
Thank you.